what happened when I tried to condense the 128 original statements into the 33 groupings. Remember I said that I took similar statements and sort of put them under one heading. Well, you're only looking at the top 15 there. There's another 18 that I didn't squeeze into the slide. But if I take one of those lines to explain what you're looking at, I'm saying that under number 1, which I deem to be all the criteria relating to quantity, then 12 of the rubrics, or sorry, my apologies, 12 of the 128 original statements I came across related to the quantity of messages posted by students. You know, typically it would be the student posts 3 messages per week. If I take another example, say number 5, about positive attitudes, then 7 of the original 128 criteria were about the attitude of the writer. So a typical statement might be the writer was upbeat and positive in her contributions. So that was my intermediate stage when I tried to condense the 128 statements into something more coherent. Yes, absolutely, Lauren, your point about quantity. You know, something that, you know, a criterion like you post 2 messages a week, for goodness sake, you know, any 2? Could you comment about your family, the football, the World Cup? So, yeah, very crude criteria. Okay, when I had those 33 unique criteria, I then endeavoured to code them. I coded them under 10 headings. I came up with 10 categories of criteria. The 10 categories are in the left-hand column. So, for example, code 5 is all of the criteria relating to participation, which would be something like the number of messages posted, how often the students visited the forum. I grouped them all together under a code 5, and I found if you look at row 5 in that table, I'm saying that all of the criteria relating to participation represented 18 of the 20 rubrics had criteria relating to participation. And that translated to 36 of the original 128 criteria. To be honest, I think it's the column-headed number of rubrics that's important. So I'm going to focus on that. If we take the top one, code 1, shouldn't say the top one, it wasn't the most popular, but code 1 relating to the quality of academic discourse. You'll be pleased to know that 16 of the 20 rubrics had at least one criterion relating to the quality of academic discourse. Now, you could turn that round and say, you mean that there were 4 rubrics that had nothing to do with the quality of academic discourse, and that would be a true conclusion. 4 of the 20 rubrics genuinely had nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of academic debate. A really surprising finding, a really surprising and worrying finding, I think. Any comments about that table?
Okay, since I got in first, I'll give myself the chance to talk. No, that's really interesting, Bobby. And one of the things I was just really thinking about here is, in terms of the terms that we use, are they shorthand? I mean, when academics use certain words, it's usually a shorthand or a proxy for something else. And in the sort of discourse of the academe, when we say something like quality of academic discourse, if you say that to another academic, they probably have some idea about what you actually mean by that. So I suppose what a lot of these things are that you've got here, because they're just very short headings, they would obviously need a lot of unpacking in terms of, from a student's perspective, about what does that mean, because we're not talking to another academic, we're talking to a student when we write these things in the rubrics. So I just wonder whether there was some comments you wanted to make on that, just in terms of perhaps the issue of shorthand academic terms that we use that actually have quite complex meanings, and we think we understand what that means, or what those meanings, or what those words represent, but perhaps other, certainly students may not.
Very true, Jeff. I would agree with that. And yeah, at the end of the day, a rubric is written in English, and English is, an imprecise communication medium. So there will always be an issue about what words mean. But nonetheless, I do think there is an important message in that table that, if you take number 5, 18 of the 20 rubrics had at least one criterion, and some had more than one criterion on a particular theme. But 18 of the 20 rubrics had criteria that were about participation, which would typically be something about posted twice per week or something like that. If you take the next one, code 6, relating to etiquette, now that meant things like you were polite, you were supportive. Mr. Sadler would have a lot to say about criteria about politeness. Unless politeness was a learning objective, he would argue, and I would too, that politeness has no place to play in academic grading. Okay, so you can see the mix there of academic standards and non-academic standards. This slide shows the top 5, that participation was the most common criterion. I think that's worth restating, that the most common criterion in my 20 rubrics related not to the quality of cognition, it's not the quality of understanding, it's not the quality of engagement with the learning objectives, but it was the quality of participation. As I said, typically how often you posted to the forum. Number 2 and 4 and 5 are academic, but number 3 was this point about, politeness and so on. So at least 2 of the 5, Royce, Sadler would argue, were contaminants. Royce used that phrase, contaminant, to mean that they should not form part of grading.